If you want to see a former charismatic who can still speak in tongues, then stay tuned for this episode of Digging Deeper. Guys, this is not meant to be offensive, but we have to be honest. Modern tongue speaking is not supernatural. In the Bible, the gift of tongues is never identified as ecstatic speech or free vocalization. No, it is always the supernatural ability to speak in previously unlearned, intelligible human languages. And if you don't believe me, I published a video in which I go through all the verses on tongues in Acts and Corinthians to demonstrate that. I even covered the verse that says the tongue speaker does not speak to man, but to God. You can find the link in the description. But what I want to do in this video is to offer you further thoughts that help you to see that modern glossolalia is not produced by the Holy Spirit. One thing that demonstrates that are the countless people who kept their ability to speak in tongues after becoming cessationists. In fact, I myself am a former charismatic who can still speak in tongues. So let me give you a demonstration of that. Castrano me chetre peorotrufa chalamastra, tora patere. Catestra canemesha potara, io catestra canemestra chayasha patoro, oro pestre catafara chayamostro, le posho chayavastra patero, oyo pestre catacha. Modern glossolalia is often described as a prayer language, a spiritual language, or even the language of angels. But have you ever considered how it would look like if angels actually talked like that? This is how it would look like.
Angelic reinforcement, angelic reinforcement. Vika hata anda ata, ora bata rata anda eke manda rasata.
Don't you think that God, who is the creator of all the breathtaking beauty around us, would give angels a more beautiful language than what we just heard? There are even fantasy authors and filmmakers who are able to make up languages that sound more authentic and beautiful than what modern tongue speakers do. Consider, for example, the Elvish language from Lord of the Rings. If J.R.R. Tolkien is able to create this, you can be sure that a God-created angelic language would sound superior. Then the other thing that should bother many modern tongue speakers is the fact that the biblical tongues always occurred spontaneously. There was never an instructor present who explained how to do it. Instead, the book of Acts shows that the Spirit always gave the tongue speakers suddenly and completely. Modern tongue speaking, however, seems to be nothing else than learned behavior. It is often the result of group-related conditioning. This is also an observation made by John Kihldal, who is a psychologist. In his long-term study on glossolalia, he noticed the following. Although no two tongue speakers sounded exactly alike, if the prominent leader spoke in a kind of Old Testament Hebraic style, those who were taught by him also spoke in this manner. If the leader of the group evidenced Spanish diction and mannerisms, his followers also developed that style. Many psychologists have identified modern glossolalia as a sign of emotional instability, hysteria, neuroticism, or mental illness. Even though I am critical of today's tongue speaking, I have to disagree with such conclusions. Modern glossolalia is simply learned behavior and psychological relaxation. In fact, It is something pretty much everyone can do, no matter if the person is a Christian or not. Another problem is that modern glossolalia is too individualistic. Yes, there might be several people who speak in a Hebrew or Spanish sounding style, but if you make a more careful comparison, you would find out that there is almost no lexical overlap between the different tongue speakers. This to me is evidence that the phenomenon is not supernatural, but a mere expression of an individual's psyche. Many modern Pentecostals and Charismatics would also say that there are two types of tongues described in the New Testament. One type is the ability to speak in previously unlearned human languages. The other type is to speak in non-human languages. The second category is what in practice looks like free vocalization. Now let's assume for a second the New Testament teaches two categories of tongues, earthly and non-earthly tongues. I don't think this is true, but let's assume it for a second. How do you then demonstrate that what modern tongue speakers do actually belongs into the second category? There is no description in the Bible of how this second category of tongues would sound like or look like. The modern practice is really based on a lot of assumptions. But why do so many Pentecostals and Charismatics think their practice is authentic? Well, their certainty is based on emotions. What hinders them to listen to any critique is a heartwarming feeling they experience when speaking in tongues. And shall I tell you something? There is generally nothing wrong with heartwarming feelings. I have that all the time when I pray in an understandable language. But these heartwarming feelings do not authenticate modern glossolalia. Have you ever considered the possibility that changed feelings occur because of what you do with your heart rather than with your mouth? So it is possible for a believer to practice modern glossolalia and gain increased psychological well-being. But this happens not because of the babbling that is done, but because of consciously turning to God and bringing up burdens and praises. These things are still present in the tongue speaker's mind, and God is able to see that. So God might simply be gracious when a believer mistakenly assumes modern glossolalia is the biblical gift. And now that you know that, use real words when you pray. Some of you might still ask, what about those high-profile scholars who approve of modern glossolalia, such as Wayne Grudem, Sam Storms, or D.A. Carson? Look, intelligent people can still be mistaken. And yes, I read their books. Also, don't forget to check out my other video in which I go through all the verses on tongues in the Bible. You can find the link in the description. Alright everyone, I really hope this video has been helpful to you. And if you like it, don't forget to share it with others. See you in the next video.